Hello everyone, welcome to a new video in this channel. I'm speaking in English because we're going to speak with Mat Oxley. The interview will be completely in English, and this intro is just to make sure that YouTube doesn't mix up the audio channels, because you can choose either to watch it in English or in Spanish in another channel. In this same YouTube channel, okay? So, we're going to speak with Mat Oxley, that is journalist in MotoGP. He's in his 38th season. He has written several books about Valentino Rossi, about Mick Doohan. He has written this Fast Stuff, that is a gorgeous book about the all good times in MotoGP. And he's one of the journalists I most appreciate, which I read most, and I also listen to his podcast with Peter Bohm. Absolutely astonishing podcast. And he's going to write a book about Marc Márquez, and I think it is a good occasion to speak with Mat Oxley, with the author, because he has spoken with a lot of people and he has some clues, some keys about Marc Márquez that maybe will be useful to listen, because in Spain we all know Marc Márquez. In Italy they all know what Márquez, and in Spain we know what the Italians are saying, and obviously what we are saying. But what does the people in Great Britain say? I think Mat Oxley is one of the great voices of the journalists of MotoGP, British voice. So this is the interview with Mat Oxley. I hope you enjoy it, and give a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm recording right now. So, Mat Oxley, hello, how are you?
Hey, Nico. Very well. I'm very well. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
Fine. Very. I'm both a little bit nervous of speaking with you.
Not as nervous as I am speaking to you.
And the other thing is that I am very willing to do this interview because I am a big follower of you, since I have this book of yours that I read it fast off. Yeah, when I was when I was preparing myself to be the voice of broadcast in Spain for MotoGP, I read your book, and now I'm reading your blog and listening to your podcast. Congratulations for your podcast, because it is so clarifying of what has happened in the weekend. So it's a pleasure to listen to it.
Great, thank you.
And now you're speaking a lot about Marc Márquez, and you yourself you're writing a biography of Márquez. Is it a biography or is it a book about?
No, it's a biography. The first biography I ever wrote about a rider was about Mick Doohan. This is 25 years ago. And one of the comments, in the book was about the book from one of the readers was, it's just a book about his life, So it's a book about his life, about Marc's life. I've kind of thought about writing a biography about him for quite a while, because obviously, if you're a journalist or an author or anyone in communications, whether that be print or TV or radio, you want a story. That's what you want. You want to tell stories that are going to interest people and so on. So Marc already had an interesting story, but to go from the very top to the very bottom and then back to the very top that's astonishing what he's done,
And did you decide to write this book last year when he was on Ducati, or the year before?
I kind of was working towards it last year, and so I've kind of had it in my mind. I don't know whether you've ever written a book yourself, but you kind of, it just turns around in your mind for a while, and things kind of fit into place, or they don't. And then you think, no, that's a stupid idea. I don't want to write a book. That's going to take me years, And then it all kind of slots into place, and you go, oh, now I know where to go. It's strange. It's a nice process. I enjoy it.
Okay, you have spoken with a lot of people to write this book. Have you spoken with his family, with his parents?
Yeah, I used from Julia. Do you say Julia or?
Sí, Julián.
Yeah,
Julián or
I
Julia.
have some words from Julia. but nothing from his mother, because it's really difficult to. Marcus's sort of PR people, kind of, they're very protective. So, but I've got enough about his background in his childhood, and then I've mostly focused on literally speaking to the people who were helping him from the age of 8 or 9, you know, and you know, I mean, I've obviously worked with Marquez for. I think the first time I interviewed him was when he was in Moto2, so that's 15 years ago, basically. But what you realize is that when you speak to people that have known him since he was a kid, that you have a picture of who he is, or I had a picture of who he is, but I've kind of realized that he's actually not who I thought he was. There's a lot more going on than I thought. So I've actually kind of learned a lot myself, which is, I love, you know, I love learning stuff about riders and racing. So, I mean, that's obviously the hope of the book, that it will tell people things that they don't already know, you know, and it's certainly, I've learned a lot of things about him, which I really just hadn't been aware of, you know?
Yeah, can you tell us just one thing, not to make a big spoiler of the book, obviously?
Yeah. Well, you know, things, I think what I focused on and what most other journalists and so on focused on about Marc was his riding talent, you know, his technique, how he could control the front tire, which is his killer skill. No one else, even now, can control the front tire like he can, which has given him a huge advantage. You know, it's been a cornerstone of his championship successes. But you know, what you realize that it's actually his intellect and his temperament that are incredibly important, especially his intellect, how he is able to, I kind of put it like he's got an extra gear in his brain. You know, everybody has got 6 gears and he's got a 7th gear. You know, he's probably not the only rider in history to have had this. I would say Valentino Rossi was the same. Where he can, the way he approaches the weekend, the way he approaches races, the way he approaches his strategies, the way, just everything about him is tuned towards just one thing: winning on Sunday and winning on Saturday as well now. But and yeah, you realize that, you know, his ability to set up, there's this huge myth, for example, that he does not know how to set up a motorcycle. Yeah. You know, and that he destroyed the Honda. Yeah. And that he's now destroying the Ducati because no one else can ride it. I mean, this is complete and utter bullshit. I mean, I've always known that myself, because you cannot do what he's done without being able to do those things. But speaking to his 3 crew chiefs, Santi Hernandez, Frankie Carshady, and this year, Marco Rigamonti, they all say completely the opposite. They all say that they've never worked with a rider that can give such precise comments, that knows what the bike needs, that knows what the bike needs to allow him to do what he needs to do. And I've spoken to tire engineers, suspension engineers that have all worked with him, and they all say the same thing. So, you know, it's just a kind of fan myth that's kind of built up, you know, that the reason the Honda became rubbish was because of Marc. Yeah. And now the Ducati is becoming rubbish because of Marc. I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah. But, you know, so and again, with this book, hopefully, you know, you want the truth to come out. That's what you want to come out. And you know, and if all of his crew chiefs and all the technicians that I've spoken with and all his mechanics say, wow, he's a genius when it comes to setup, then that's the truth, right? Yeah.
Okay. I'm very interested in when you spoke with his father. Can you recognize in Marc Márquez nowadays whatever his father told you about the Márquez being a kid? I mean, is he traveling with all the things that he had like a kid now?
I think it's more from speaking to the people that work with him, the crew chiefs and mechanics that I spoke to that work with him, and team managers from the age of 8 or 9. They say literally it was like speaking with a 25-year-old, you know, when he was 10 years old.
Oh yes.
You spoke to him and it was like he was a 25-year-old, because he, well, A, his intelligence, and B, yeah, he was so far ahead of himself, and speaking with other people who worked with him then, that, there were a lot of fast young kids around at that time, but there always are. Márquez was exceptional, but there were a lot of kids that weren't much slower. But Marc knew exactly why he was fast, knew how to go faster, knew how to fix the machine to make him go faster, and that he had this one of those brains that slows everything down.
Yeah.
So when he was racing, it was like everything was happening in slow motion to him, and so he could then look at things in a different. While everybody else is, if you're racing, it's pretty scary. You're on the limit and you're nearly crashing all the time, and to be able to do that whilst have another part of your brain thinking about, okay, it is astonishing,
Yeah. I remember you writing about, I think it was in Japan, when the front locked in the downhill of Japan, of Marc Márquez. And I remember you writing like, "This is not real. You are in the floor if the front locks." And this man managed to, even it was more astonishing than when he picked up the bike from 65 degrees, because you can imagine that somehow he managed to put something in the throttle and the bike picks up. But to save that front, what I'm trying to find the word in English. What savage things have you seen in Marc Márquez riding?
Well, it's just a constant, isn't it? And that's. I mean, the wonderful thing about him has been that he's been so exciting to watch. I mean, less so now that he's on the Ducati, because it doesn't need to be ridden in the way that the Honda needs to be ridden. That he rode the Honda like a bull, because that was the only way to get the performance out of the bike. So we've seen it so many times, him locking the front. I remember Assen, him locking the front at the end of the start-finish straight with the front, a big cloud of smoke from the front tire, and he didn't crash. No one else would have survived that. No one else. I mean, one of the engineers I interviewed quite a while back, because obviously writing this book, I've also used a lot of the stuff that I've researched over the past 15 years with Marc. And one of the engineers, he was working with Yamaha at the time, or Suzuki, in fact, and he said, ever since motorbike racing has been going on, engineers have been looking for a device to save the front tire from locking, like an anti-lock braking, which you're not allowed to use in Grand Prix racing. And Honda now has that device. He's called Marc Márquez, and that is his winning skill. No one else can touch him there, even now. I mean, it's incredible, really.
How would you describe Márquez outside inside the paddock, but actually outside the track? When he's like a citizen.
I mean, I don't know him as a citizen, but as a MotoGP journalist, all you can do is kind of see how they carry themselves in the paddock. See, just to get an idea of what they're like. And I would say that Marc and his whole family are very old school. Like you look at most Grand Prix racers, they've got a lot of tattoos, they've got kind of crazy haircuts, they're very fashion conscious. Not all of them, but most of them. They've all got expensive clothes on. Let's say you can see a pair of ripped jeans that cost 500 euros or whatever. You know what I mean? And they've got haircuts and all this kind of stuff, tattoos. Marc does none of that. He's never had a crazy haircut. He's never had a tattoo, as far as I know. And he just wears jeans and t-shirts and hoodies and trainers. And Alex is the same, and his dad is the same. There's no like, hey, look at us, we can afford expensive clothes and stuff like that. So I like I say, you can only judge by looking at those sort of things. I don't know what Marc's like at home. I have no idea. But I just think that he's quite old school.
Yeah.
I mean, he's undoubtedly humble. You know, I mean, he's very rarely cocky. There's very occasional places where he kind of drops that little thing, like at Assen, you know, when the kind of furore built up about, oh, Alex isn't trying to overtake him, which is nonsense as well. Of course, Alex wanted to overtake him, but he didn't want to knock him off. You know, and if your brother's in front of you, you're probably less likely to do a dangerous maneuver than if it was another rider. I mean, to anyone who's got a brother or sister, would you ride a 160 kilo motorcycle into them at 160 kilometers an hour?
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't. You know, it's basic humanity, right? But on the Sunday after the race, in the press conference, Marc said, you know, and this first time I've ever seen him kind of not attack the press, but you know, confront the press. Exactly. And he said, look, all the riders here, you've got to respect all of them. You know, everybody's trying to, you know, race for his team, race for his colors and so on. And you know, the interesting thing is that that's the first time I'd seen Marc confront the press, even though the press has been very hard on him for the last 10, 15 years, sometimes with good reason. The first time he'd confronted the press was when his brother was being attacked, not him, right? Yeah. And I think, again, that's quite significant. So you just get these little indications of what a rider's like, you know. So I think he's humble. I think he's old school. I think, you know, the Marquez is quite a kind of conservative, old-fashioned Spanish family, which is cool. And you just never see them trying to show everyone how clever or rich they are, you know. Yeah.
Speaking about family, are you aware of the importance that Alex has in the recovery of Marc? Someone told you about that, or have you seen?
Marc, because I excuse me, just need to drink water.
Yeah.
You know, I've interviewed him many times over the years. I mean, dozens of times, one-on-ones, and I was able to interview him for the book a few weeks ago. Yeah. At Bruno, and obviously I asked him about that, and you know, because when you get into that kind of a hole, a 4-year hole of, you know, in a big, deep, dark, black hole from that kind of injury, you know, possibly your career's over. You know, and people need to understand that for a racer, you know, they're all addicts basically, right? And you know, for a racer to give up racing is basically like a junkie trying to give up drugs. You know, you don't want to do it. You know, it's your life. You know, they're very different, but there's a similarity in the addiction. So he was facing that, you know, losing the love of his life basically. Yeah. And so I was asking him, you know, did you go into depression? You know, because riders do. You know, and he said, I was kind of getting in there, but it was my brother that helped me out, you know.
Wow.
And so I think that, you know, I mean, I had a brother and we fought like dogs, you know. But it's obvious that Marc and Alex are very different. I'm sure they've had their fights, but you know, there is without doubt a genuine, you know, love and respect there, you know, without doubt. I mean, they've been around in Grand Prix together for more than 10 years, and I've never seen either of them kind of being nasty about the other. You know, they just seem to have a remarkable relationship. And I think they both, you know, and without a doubt, Alex has helped a lot, you know, in helping Marc get through that. I'm not even sure would Marc have got through there without it. Yeah. Because the fact that Alex was racing when Marc was, you know, injured a lot of that time allowed Marc to still feel involved with MotoGP. And he also told me that, you know, if he had completely exited MotoGP all through that time, he might never have come back. Yeah. But Alex being there and him watching on the TV if he wasn't at the race kept him kind of, you know, zoned in on MotoGP. So I think both of them have had a huge influence on each other's careers, without a doubt.
What a good point. Well, speaking about the championship, now Marc, will help Alex to go ahead of Pecco Bagnaia, no?
Well,
how do you see that?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a tricky one because the big question, and I actually interviewed Alex a few weeks ago as well, a couple of months ago at COTA. Yeah, and was obviously asking him about the whole brother thing, and I kind of said what will happen if it comes down to the last corner, because that's what we all want to know.
Yeah,
they've been very nice with each other.
Yeah,
very nice with each other, because, like I say, they're brothers and they love each other. You don't want to hurt someone you love, do you? So that's all very nice. But I said, okay, it's all very nice. You don't want to hurt each other, but what happens if it comes to the last corner? And Alex kind of laughed and kind of seemed to suggest that he kind of knows that his brother is more of a killer than he is,
Yeah.
But it will be amazing if that does happen.
Yeah.
If it does come to the last corner. But again, you would have to bet on Marc, because that's where he lives. That's where he lives, in that last corner chaos. That's what he lives for. He loves that stuff. And Alex, he can be very aggressive, but he's not the killer that Marc is.
There is a thing in Ducati now that everyone involved in MotoGP is telling this story, no? The approach in which Ducati has seen the arrival of Márquez. Before, in the first year, it was like, let's see what happens with this evil thing inside our structure. But I have the impression from outside that Márquez has gained everybody to his team. He has got in charge of Ducati. No, he's a real leader now.
Well, that's what all racers try to do.
Yeah,
the first person you have to make sure you beat is your teammate, right? And the reason you need to do that is because you want the focus, the technical focus of the garage, of the development, to come towards you. And the technical focus will always go to the stronger rider, the guy that's most likely to win the championship. Of course it will. And that's exactly what's happened with Marc. I read a few books. I've always thought of Marc to be motorcycling's Ayrton Senna, right?
Yeah.
Because they're so similar in so many ways, this absolute necessity to win, it's like oxygen. Senna was famous for knocking cars out of the way, trying to win. Marc has been famous for knocking other bikes out of the way, trying to win. Senna always was absolutely focused whenever he went to a new team to get the garage behind him, to get them. And that's by being fast, and by being good with your technical feedback, but it's also through your human relationships in the garage, And Marc has always been very good at that. We from the outside, and this again is something I've kind of learned more. I always knew it. From the outside, he looks like a racing machine, right? But if you see him on the inside, how he actually works with the people he works with, everybody just loves him. You know what I mean? And he puts a lot of effort into that relationship, as you have to in any relationship, when he was at Honda, if I managed to blag a dinner or whatever off Honda, and I'd be in there, and he would be in there with his entire crew every night, right? So this is 10 of them, maybe. And they're making so much noise, laughter, shouting, and because Marc realizes that's how it should be. You have to have a family,
Yeah.
And the family that plays together stays together, So it shouldn't, racing isn't just like a normal job. You don't leave the office at 5:30 and come back at 9 a.m. You need to cultivate human relationships, and especially if you're a rider. Like I said, you go into Honda Hospitality and he's there with the whole crew, and I won't mention the other rider, but his teammate at the time is sat there with his manager having dinner on his own, right? So how are the mechanics? how keen are the mechanics going to be to work for a rider that brings them to dinner every dinner and says, I won't eat dinner until you're finished with the bikes. Tell me when you're going to finish the bikes. We'll have dinner then. So he actually organizes his evening around the mechanics, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's pretty obvious, right?
Yeah. I think you pointed this out in your last episode of the Oxley Bomb podcast, and you said this must be heartbreaking for Pecco Bagnaia to be sat with his engineer, seeing Márquez people having the party, but also with Gigi Dall'Igna, also with Ardozzi. That have you ever seen Gigi like hug someone, any rider, the way he hugs Márquez?
No, it's. I'm sort of surprised that Gigi hasn't got face cramps because he's just been grinning the whole year, and I've never seen him grin like that. And again, you know, Ducati have been winning races for a long time now, lots of races for 5-6 years, lots and lots of races. But no one celebrates like Marc. Yeah. Right? I mean, if you watch the Inside Lenovo Ducati team YouTube from every race, the kind of party they have outside the front of the garage is crazy. And Marc is just fully into it. And again, the people who've been working they've not just been working all weekend. Many fans don't have a great idea of how hard these people work. I mean, it's 250 days on the road every year, you know, away from your wife or your girlfriend or whatever, away from your kids, away from your friends. And it might be the greatest job in the world, but it comes at a very high price. Yeah. And therefore, if your rider can give you some enjoyment, some emotion, again, that's going to make you love him even more. And therefore, you're going to be prepared to work for him even harder, you know. So, but yeah, I mean, it's absolutely right that Pecco is sat there on the other side of the garage, kind of debriefing with his crew chief and his engineers, going, you know, what, you know, and without doubt, he's got an issue with that bike that his riding style just doesn't work with it. But yeah, it must be very hard for him, having led that team for the last 4-5 years, to now be not just number 2, but kind of by that. I mean, we're 12 races in, and Marc has scored pretty much twice as many points as Bagnaia. You know?
Yeah. Have you been disappointed by Pecco's Bagnaia in this year? I mean, did you consider him a rider who would fight with Márquez for the championship?
Last year, the thing about Pecco, about Bagnaia, is that he's always managed to step it up. Yeah. In the past, whenever somebody comes along or something happens and he needs to get a bit faster, he'll go away and think about it because he's that kind of rider, and he'll come back and he'll be faster. So I thought that maybe Márquez would bring something extra out of him. Yeah. So I thought, yeah, maybe he will. I kind of didn't think that he would be able to beat Marc fully over a season unless something strange happened, because Marc, you know, he's arguably the greatest of all time, and Bagnaia is a 2-time world champion, 3-time world champion, but he's not arguably the greatest of all time. But I thought that certainly that Bagnaia would do better, and I think if they were both on GP24s, he would be. You know, I think if they were all on GP24s, the racing would be a lot better because you'd have 6 guys all on the same bike, and all of them would be now and again up front, you know. But we still don't really know what's wrong with the GP25 because Ducati won't tell us. Something to do with engine crankcase or engine position or some little differences. And whatever they are, they don't give Bagnaia the feeling he needs to go into a corner fast. You know, when you go into a corner fast on a motorbike, you need to be able to hear what the front tire is telling you. Yeah. If you can't have a conversation with the front tire, then you're in trouble, because if you can't hear it, you're going to crash. You're going to go to the limit and you're going to go over the limit. Marc has that ability, like a tire whisperer, if you like, where he can hear the front tire like no one else. So he can feel what's going on and then adapt his riding to get around that problem. So, some people have been giving Bagnaia a lot of criticism. I fully don't agree with that. Say, oh, he's moaning about this. But at the level that these people are operating at, the tiniest difference, he's finishing, 2-3 seconds behind at the end of a race. So that's what, if you got 3 seconds, 30 laps, that's what, a tenth of a second a lap, you're not talking about a great difference,
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a question that has been repeatedly made in this channel during the last 2 years. And we made a t-shirt also. Why did Gigi sign Márquez?
Yeah. Well,
we know the answer. What is your approach about that? Because he denied the world champion that finally was Martin in the benefit of Márquez, and that's it.
I think he could see what Marc was doing on the GP23. I mean, obviously he has access to all the data, to all the videometry, whatever it's called, all of this kind of stuff. And he knows Marc beyond the riding technique. He knows what an operator he is, what a killer he is, what a, there's no one else like him, right? So I was a little bit surprised when they chose Marc, but not much, because for those reasons, I mean, he there's no one else on the grid like him.
Yeah.
No one near, really. Yeah. And so although Martin was at the height of his powers last year, what Marc was doing on the GP23, and there was a huge gap between the GP23 and the GP24. What he was doing on that bike was incredible. I mean, you think that there were 19 races last year, 20. The GP, there were 20. Aprilia won 1 race. GP24s won 16, and Marc won 3 on the GP23. And I think GP23 riders, the other 3 or 4 GP riders, scored 2 podiums between them. You know what I mean? So Marc was a huge step ahead of them. So and again, and it's come to pass perfectly this year, if you think about it. By doing that on the GP23, Marc once again proved that he could ride around problems. And if you think about it now, the GP25 is a problem. Yeah. Where would Ducati be if they didn't have Marc? They'd have Alex leading the championship on last year's bike, which they wouldn't want.
Yeah, for sure. The thing is that if there is this enormous difference between Marc Márquez and the rest of the grid, the years when Márquez was not on the grid, what was the real level of the championship? Because we were always saying that, Pecco and Martin, they are the next gen. They are going to... Even Valentino Rossi said when Márquez returned, he will find a new grid that he doesn't know that is much better than the past. But this didn't occur.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, good point.
So the question is, what did we see those 3 years?
Yes. Well, we saw a mirage, I guess. We saw a mirage, didn't we? Yeah. And I guess we were taken in by what was happening. I mean, I remember interviewing Hervé Poncharal, the owner of Tech3, and also Mats Larsson, who's like the chief engineer at Olin Suspension. He's the first guy he worked with in MotoGP was Wayne Rainey. Right. Yeah. So he's been around a long time. He's worked with everyone, right? And he, both Poncharal and Larson said that after the Jerez 2020 Grand Prix and with all the accidents, and then he came back, they both said he would have won all 4 world championships without doubt. And again, these are Larson has been in MotoGP since the late 80s, early 90s, working with every top rider, from Stoner to anyone that's won the championship. Stoner, Marquez, Doohan, I mean everyone. And Hervé Poncharal has been in Grand Prix racing for 40 years. They know what they're talking about. Yeah. And if they said that, so, and again, the thing is, it's not just speed. It's sure, Martin and Bagnaia were going very fast, and the level did go up, especially when Michelin introduced that new rear tire last year. A lot of lot of lap records went by a second, and that was because of the tire. But obviously, you still got to be able to ride with that tire. So yet, although the level was there, I think Marc still, as a complete package as a racer, he's got more than just the speed.
Yeah,
it's the way he thinks about things. You think of what happened at Kota on the grid, where he had it all planned out in his mind, you know. And I know there was some sort of mess up with the rules, but he in whatever situation he's in, high stress situation, during a race, before a race, he can think how to get out of that situation. He will think about the best way to get out. And you think about Bruno a few weeks ago, when in the sprint, when both Bagnaia and Marc got tire penalty warnings on their dashes. I know they proved not to be right or faulty. How those two riders dealt with that penalty. Bagnaia slowed down. They both needed to let someone pass to warm up their front tire. Bagnaia slowed down on a corner entry. So as he was going into the corner, the guy came past him, and immediately because he's still braking, was immediately 20 meters ahead of it, 20, 30 meters ahead. So A, he's lost track position, and B, he's not getting his tire heated up. Marc went very, very wide on a left-hander on the throttle, and they showed it on the onboard, and you could hear the throttle from his onboard. It was Acosta that came through on the inside, and he was looking back, and even before Acosta was alongside him, he was already accelerating, right? Yeah. So by the next corner, Marc was a meter behind Acosta. Yeah. So A, he hadn't lost track position, and B, he was heating up his front tire. Yeah. So you know what I mean? That kind of huge, high stress situation like that, he's got this ice cold ability to just go, okay, I need to do this. Yeah. And I don't know anyone else like that.
Yeah, the worse for everyone is the better for Marc. No, he manages.
I mean, you know, you get those situations like at Bruno in 2019 where it was raining for qualifying. Yeah, and it started drying
on a slicks.
Marc went out on slicks. I think everybody went out on rain tires for their first run, for their first time attack, and then Marc decided to go out on slicks for a second because it was drying, you know. And as soon as he went out, it started raining again. Not all around the circuit, but in a few places. And his last lap, it was like reds all the way around, and everybody was like going, "Holy mother of God, what is he doing?" And then coming out to the last section, it was pissing with rain, you know. And everybody was like, "Well, that's it. That's his lap gone," you know. And he went through the rain section, the thing going like this, and he was 2.5 seconds faster than anybody else.
Yeah,
and Danilo Petrucci, who always says the greatest things, he said after that, he said, I don't understand why the track was dry for Marc but wet for the rest of us. You know what I mean? I mean, that's it. And I remember also Jack Miller coming in after that session, because he had pole until Marc went 2.5 seconds faster. And he came into the Pramac Ducati box, and they were all, you know, giving him back slaps and high fives and saying, great job. And he was pretty happy because he was second. And he looked up at the monitors and thought 2.5 seconds. And he just was like, F. You know, it hurts, you know? Yeah. So when you have riders of that kind of stature saying that kind of stuff, you understand. Like I say, I try not to use my own opinion in what I write. You know, I'm a journalist, I have opinions, but my opinions don't really matter. You know, the opinions that matter are the engineers and the rivals, you know. Yeah. And I've interviewed quite a few of his rivals for this book: Jorge Lorenzo, Andrea Dovizioso, Cal Crutchlow, Alice Espargaro, Paul Espargaro. So, you know, and interviewing them about him is great, really great.
Yeah. Do they speak well about Márquez?
Yeah.
Or do they want? Do they still want to kill him?
Jorge was, you know, he spoke well of him. Yeah. But also, you know, obviously, I want to address in the book. Well, I do address in the book Marc's aggression and his sometimes over the top aggression. Yeah. Which has got him into so much trouble over the years. And you know, and Lorenzo is quite straight about that. He says, yeah, he is too dangerous, or he was too dangerous, you know. The others not so much. You know, all different riders have their own level of what they consider to be okay. And Lorenzo was always very quite strict about his own behavior after he got banned for taking Alex DeAngelis out at Motegi in 2005, I think. So after that, he was always very respectful. But the others, Crutchlow, both Espargaros, both of them, they're like, not a problem for me. You know, you get these two kinds of racers, don't you?
Yeah.
The sort of fighters and the riders. Dovizioso was also quite critical of Marc as well, but he was the only guy that worked out how to beat him, right?
Yeah,
Dovizioso with the cutback, which was just fantastic. You know, he beat him 4 or 5 times like that in 2017, 2018, and 2019 by basically what he would do. Dovizioso was very late on the brakes. He was a very late braker. If he knew Marc was behind him, he would, coming into the last corner, he would always brake absolutely at the limit, knowing that Marc would, however at the limit Dovizioso was, that Marc would still come past. But he knew that he wouldn't be able to make the corner.
Yeah.
So he would go a little bit wide and then Dovizioso would cut back. And that worked. It proved that, you know, you can outfox Marquez.
Yeah, there is in the career of Marc Márquez. I have just 2 more questions.
That's okay. It's all good. It's all good.
I
was just writing down notes. That's all.
Yeah, something for the book already?
No, something that I was writing for the book yesterday, but I'd like to tell you about. Yeah.
Okay, so the thing is that there is one particular moment in Márquez's career, that is Sepang 2015. I don't know if you have some kind of big picture about what happened there that is in the book or not?
Oh, yes. I mean, it's, there's a whole chapter.
Yeah, okay.
There's a whole chapter on 2015. It's the biggest chapter in the book because it's so important, you know? I mean, it's one of the biggest things that's ever happened in the sport, really.
Yeah.
It was, and so I've tried to, speaking to various people who were involved and weren't, you know, what happened and why did it happen and where did it come from, going back to their meeting at the ranch in 2014, which is kind of where it started. And then, you know, I mean, there was various incidents, specific incidences on that. Well, I would actually take it back to Laguna Seca 2013.
Yeah.
When Marc did a Rossi replica on Rossi at the corkscrew. I kind of think things like that started to grate on Valentino. You know, he was almost taking the piss. You know what I mean? And then we go on to the ranch in September 2014 after Misano, and obviously, apparently that upset Valentino. And then we went into the next year, and there was Argentina where they collided and Marc crashed. There was Assen where they collided and Rossi won the race. And so I think, you know, those are the specific points. And then there was Phillip Island, then there was Sepang, and then there was a Valencia. I mean, it was such a story. But speaking to Marc, and Marc has admitted this much himself, you know, at Valencia, people said there was a conspiracy. I never believed that. Yeah. I never believed that. This is not how riders work. You know, you're not going to get 3 riders, i.e. Lorenzo, Dani Pedrosa and Marquez, to sit down and say, okay, riders are not like that. They hate it. They all hate each other, right? They hate each other. They might pretend they don't, but they do. So I don't ever believe that conspiracy. I wasn't. The thing was that year that Lorenzo won 7 races, right?
Yeah.
He was never overtaken once in any of them. Once he was in front, he was impossible to overtake because Lorenzo had got his riding technique, the Bridgestone front and the Yamaha to this state of perfection, whereby he could just use this massive corner entry speed. And no one could beat that. Once he was in head, no one, you know, the results prove it. So there was that factor at Valencia. Could Marc have tried a crazy overtake? Because for sure his life would have been easier in the long term if he had tried to overtake Lorenzo and it had failed and he'd taken Lorenzo out and Rossi had won the championship. right?
Yeah,
Imagine that.
Sure.
Everyone would have, all the Rossi fans would have loved Marquez, and he wouldn't have had any of this horrible shit that he had to deal with over the next years. So I think Marc mentions it on All In. He says, what had happened to me the previous weeks, after Malaysia, fans coming to his house, getting attacked outside his house. I mean, which I also spoke to him about for the book. I mean, really nasty stuff. Would he do anything to help Valentino Rossi win the championship after all that? Who would, Yeah. I mean, but he also told me that he was in such a kind of mentally destroyed state after those 2 weeks. But, basically, they couldn't leave the house for like a week. Yeah. They had to do all their training for the last race indoors on indoor bicycles and everything, because outside were Rossi fans and TV crews and, so he was, pretty, he's incredibly mentally strong, but I think that really affected him, and he just said he wasn't in a mental state to do, he'd been in such a state of crisis. The last thing he wanted to do was create another crisis by taking out Lorenzo. You know what I mean? Yeah. And as he said, if he wanted to help Lorenzo, he would have just stayed 5 seconds back. Yeah. He would have pretended to have a problem. Yeah. If he wanted to avoid conspiracy, but whatever he would have done, people would have said it was a conspiracy, So, yeah, I mean, I never bought that thing at the very beginning. Valencia that year, I wrote, "This is all bullshit." This is not a conspiracy. This is just the way it happened. Yeah. As Lorenzo said, the reason Rossi lost the championship, and I really, really, really wanted Rossi to win the championship. I thought he deserved it for what he'd done for MotoGP. But, as Lorenzo said, he just wasn't fast enough in the last third of the championship. Wasn't fast enough,
Do you have a clear view about the kick in Sepang?
I don't think Rossi kicked him. When riders tangle, they normally put their elbows out, to stop, because if two machines touch, then the metal will get locked together somehow, maybe, and both riders crash. So what in that kind of situation, the rider puts his elbow out. It's not an act of aggression. It's because if two elbows meet, it's better than two bites meet. And I think Rossi was doing that. I do not think there was. It's like the whole thing became so over dramatized, and people were just looking at things. It's like when Bagnaia and Alex Marquez crashed at Aragon last year. Yeah. They collided and crashed, and people are going through the slow-mo and saying, "Oh, look, you can see that so-and-so is doing this with his hand, and and you can see this." These guys are traveling at like 100 miles an hour. Things are happening very quickly. Yeah, they both could have done stuff that avoided that crash, but they didn't, and so they crashed. It just happens. Yeah. And I think Rossi was obviously wrong to do what he did, but I don't think he kicked him off. Not at all.
Okay. Do you enjoy more Marc Márquez in Honda or in Ducati? Now riding with the.
Well, I mean, he was more exciting to watch on the Honda. Because the way that bike works, the only way you couldn't ride it smoothly. Well, you could, but you wouldn't be fast. I mean, Danny rode it smoothly. Yeah. But he never won a championship on it. Poor guy. The way to get real performance out of it was the way that Marc got performance out of it. And on the Ducati, it's completely different. It's a Formula One car with two wheels. Yeah. You have to ride it smoothly. You got to use the downforce aero. You got to use the ride height. You got to, so he's not nearly as exciting to watch, which is a real shame, because I used to love watching him on the verge of losing control all the time, and kind of, they're just so entertaining, and it's not like that. But I still enjoy watching him ride, because there's no one like him, and I'm enjoying his success, because I think what he's come through, the injuries, the pain, the suffering, the sacrifice, is no one's ever done that before. Mick Doohan was out for, he had a year or so when he was suffering, a year and a half where he was suffering from extreme injury. Marc had 4 years. There's not many people that would carry on. I mean, if you've got, let's say, I don't know, 100 million euros in the bank, you won 8 world titles, why carry on? Why not just give up and go and have a nice time with your girlfriend? It's I think what he's doing is astonishing. Astonishing, it really is.
So the thing is that if we have that rider that is so ahead of the rest of the grid, and that in every race that he intervenes, it's a record involved, like the most races won in MotoGP history, blah blah. Agostini, Rossi. I think it is. Compulsory to see, okay, his level is a legend level. Now the question for you, Mat Oxley, is how would you rate Márquez in the legend level?
Wow. Oh, that's a nightmare question, and I kind of hate answering it. And there is no answer to it.
Really. I read one interview of yours, and you put it in alphabetical order.
All right, yeah. Okay, yeah, there's me dodging the question. I would say my top three, my all-time podium, is Márquez, Rossi, and King Kenny Roberts. Not in that order. And it's a long question. You can't answer the question without explaining at length why, they all have different facets about them. Marc, his speed, his ability to come back from injury. Rossi, what he did for the sport, which shouldn't really be considered in the greatest of all, in GOAT considerations, because it's apart from the riding. But nonetheless, it's there, because no one has ever done anything for the sport like Rossi, and they probably never will. And then Kenny Roberts, not only his riding, but his engineering as a team boss, what he did for rider safety and all that kind of stuff. So those are my three: Roberts, Marc, and Rossi. But they're all going to be on the top step together. Although Kenny would have to be in the middle, wouldn't he?
Okay. So Matt, you wrote something because you wanted to tell us something.
Oh right, there was one other thing about Marc thinking ahead of everyone else.
Yeah,
I think it was 2017 again at Brno. We've spoken a lot about Brno. Everyone started the race it was the main race on 2017, I think, on Sunday. Everyone started on rain tires. The track was wet, and they did the first lap. Marc was second. Lorenzo was ahead. Marc was second, and then Dovizioso, Crutchlow, whatever. And halfway through the second lap, Marc suddenly started going backwards. Like every corner, one or two riders were overtaking him. And I just thought, well, he's got a problem or whatever. And all the commentators were going, "What's going on? He's chosen the soft Michelin, not the medium. That's obviously the problem." But you don't lose 2 places every corner because of a slight difference in tire compound. And it was Crutchlow that told me what he was doing was he decided that the track was dry enough for slicks because he's Marc, and he knew that if he went into pit lane with all the good guys apart from Lorenzo behind him, they'd all follow him in and change the slicks as well, right? So he let all the 7 or 8 good guys past him until all the rivals were past him. Then he went into the garage.
Yeah, allow them an extra lap.
And Crutchlow was just peeling into the corner as he saw Marc going into the pits. He was like, "You bastard, you've done it again." You know what I mean? So this is what makes him special, not just his speed, his ability to think, okay, I need tire. It's worth risking to switch to slicks. But if I do that, everyone will follow me into pit lane and they'll come out with slicks as well. And then I'll have to fight them on slicks. So, okay, what I'll do is I'll slow down, let all these people pass me, and then I'll go into the pits. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for me, Márquez has done several things that has improved the level of the sport in competition. That was like inventing several time attacks during a qualifying session, like swapping the bike, jumping from one bike to another. He has been the law has been changed several times because of Márquez, no?
Yeah, sometimes for bad reasons.
Yeah, well, of course.
Like, the penalty point system was introduced basically because of Marc.
Yeah.
When he was finishing his last year in Moto2. Yeah. I mean, it is important to say that he does not ride like that generally anymore. You think of when he made that Jerez comeback in 2020 before he crashed, he didn't hit anyone.
Yeah.
He didn't have a trouble with anyone. And he told me that was because he was riding with the lessons of Termas 2018 when he was hitting everyone in his mind. He was like, okay, I've got to do this, but I mustn't hit anyone. So you know, he has learned, you know. I mean, for sure he did some bad things. Of course he did, you know. But yeah.
So Matt, when are you publishing the book?
Okay, so quick plug for the book. I mean, if anyone's interested in buying it, just Google Mat Oxley, Marc Márquez biography. It's easy nowadays, isn't it? And it'll take you to my website. So my plan, I've already written most of it. My plan is to have it all, where are we now? Early August. My plan is to have it all finished by the end of this month, apart from the 2025 chapter. And so it'll all go to the printers and they can get everything ready. And then when the championship is done, if he wins it, if he wins it, then it'll happen then. If he doesn't win it, it'll happen after Valencia. So the idea is to have it within a few weeks of once the championship's done. So, you know, so yeah, I mean, it's been on pre-order for a month or two now, and it's going very well. So yeah, I mean, I'm fairly happy with it. You know, you always go into a book and go like, is this working? And you know, you go forward and you go back and you make things better and you add stuff and you take stuff away, and I think it's going to be all right.
Okay. I am eager to read it.
I'll send you a copy.
To be honest,
I'll send you a copy.
No, I have ordered. I have pre-ordered the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
So I am willing to go it out. So Mat Oxley, thank you very much for this conversation. Thank you very much because you are so brilliant explaining the things that here in Spain, journalists will tend to miss everything and mix everything so that people get confused and there is more drama, you know. But you're absolutely brilliant in pointing the things out. So thanks for this conversation. We will continue. We will continue seeing you on social media and wherever you work. And thank you very much. See you next time.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with you, and good luck with the book. Ciao.